You're listening to Audiology. Support this channel by becoming a member and be sure to submit your requests for topics in the comments below. Federalist No. 6, also known as Concerning Dangers from Dissensions Between the States, is an essay by Alexander Hamilton, which forms part of the collection known as the Federalist Papers. It first appeared in the Independent Journal on November 14, 1787, under the pen name Publius, a name shared by all essays in the collection. This piece is notably one of Hamilton's two essays that argue for a political union to avoid wars between states, a theme he continues in Federalist No. 7. In this essay, Hamilton confronts the idea that nations naturally tend to fight each other because of human nature. He challenges the optimistic belief that forms of government like republicanism and economic strategies such as commerce can prevent wars. Instead, Hamilton suggests that both leaders and citizens often act on emotion rather than logic. He expresses his concerns about direct democracy and makes a case for mercantilism. To strengthen his argument, Hamilton uses a variety of examples from history and his own time, paying special attention to Pericles, a well-known leader from Athens. Hamilton shares a point that apart from facing threats from outside, the states might also end up threatening each other if they don't unite. He lays out several reasons why wars start, which include the quest for power, safety concerns, competition over trade, and sometimes leaders start wars for their own benefit, but make it look like it's for the public good. He mentions that this isn't a new concept. Prominent figures like Pericles and Thomas Wolsey have done this in the past. Hamilton believes that anyone familiar with human nature wouldn't find this surprising. He goes on to question the idea that loving freedom and engaging in trade are sufficient to keep peace, arguing that people often act on spontaneous emotions rather than thoughtful, long-term planning. Hamilton points to various republics known for their commerce, such as Sparta, Athens, Rome, Carthage, Venice, and Holland, and notes they still often went to war. Even Great Britain, with its semi-democratic government and major commercial investments, has a history of frequent conflicts. This leads him to argue that the eagerness for war is just as strong among the ordinary people as it is among their leaders. Drawing from these examples, Hamilton concludes that the states are just as prone to conflict as any other nation. He mentions existing unrest in the states as more proof that the states need to unite to avoid internal conflict. Alexander Hamilton is the author behind Federalist No. 6, a part of the renowned Federalist Papers. These papers, including Hamilton's No. 6, were all released under the pen name Publius. They made their way to the public through New York newspapers, aiming to detail the Constitution of the United States and convince New York to agree to it. The first appearance of Federalist No. 6 was in the Independent Journal on November 14, 1787. It was quickly followed by publications in the Daily Advertiser the next day, and then in the New York Packet on November 16th. This essay came out right after those penned by John Jay. While Jay's writings focus on the idea that the states are natural partners, Hamilton takes a slightly different angle. In Federalist No. 6, he cautions that without a strong union, the states might actually end up being natural rivals. In Federalist No. 6, Alexander Hamilton outlined his view that states would frequently clash unless they joined together. He explained that nations' histories are shaped by human emotions, and that being neighbors tends to lead to disputes. Hamilton believed that people, whether individually or in groups led by influential leaders, are driven by a desire for power. Although not everyone gives into these desires, he thought a majority would. Hamilton's perspective differed from John Jay's earlier arguments in the Federalist Papers. While Jay suggested that the states were inherently connected by divine will, Hamilton cautioned that without unity, the states were inclined to conflict. He called the idea of peaceful coexistence without unity utopian speculations, and supported the idea of a federal government to prevent states from acting as independent adversaries. Hamilton also critiqued the view, popular among some political thinkers of his time, that commerce and economic growth would prevent nations from going to war. Against the backdrop of thinkers like Montesquieu and Thomas Paine, who believed that commercial republics were peace-oriented, Hamilton, a defender of protectionist policies over free trade, argued otherwise. He acknowledged that strong economies could promote peace through wealth accumulation and the higher stakes of going to war, but insisted that even commercially engaged nations could be persuaded to fight, citing historical examples like the Dutch Republic and Great Britain to support his case. By challenging the idea that commerce naturally leads to peace, Hamilton made a case for United States under a federal government to avoid internal and external conflicts, highlighting the complexities of economic growth, human nature, and international relations. In Federalist No. 6, Alexander Hamilton offers a thoughtful take on human nature, a theme that's consistent throughout the Federalist Papers. He points out that people often prioritize their immediate desires and emotional reactions over long-term benefits or overarching principles. Hamilton believed that what is in one's best interest could actually be pinpointed as a factual truth, accessible through rational thought, a truth, however, that he felt most people tend to overlook. Hamilton, along with other founding fathers, worried significantly about the potential for leaders to start wars out of a desire for power and personal glory. This concern led them to advocate for a division of powers, specifically for declaring and engaging in war to prevent such occurrences. The debate between reason and emotion displayed in Federalist No. 6 mirrors a larger argument made throughout the Federalist Papers. The authors consistently argue that their viewpoint is rooted in logic, despite noticing that people usually go with what their passions dictate or what immediately benefits them. This perspective on human nature, according to Hamilton and his colleagues, underscores the need for a governing body. They argue that this understanding of human nature isn't just applicable to the situation of the states at the time, but to all societies and countries universally. Hamilton even likens humanity's preference for passion over reason to a natural state of affairs, akin to descriptions by philosopher Thomas Hobbes, suggesting this approach applies to interactions at both the individual and national levels. Hamilton's views on humanity played a significant role in shaping his stance against direct democracy, which at the time was often equated with the chaos of mob rule. Contrary to the optimistic belief in a golden age of American political life, where citizens would miraculously transcend their biases and self-serving tendencies, Hamilton championed a more realistic form of government that acknowledged these traits. This position put him at odds with his fellow Federalist Papers author John Jay, who had more faith in the people's ability to choose wisely despite their selfish inclinations. Furthermore, Hamilton's concept of governance diverged from the traditional Republican ideals described by Montesquieu, which held civic virtue in high esteem. Instead, Hamilton advocated for a pragmatic republicanism, accepting the imperfections in wisdom and virtue among the citizenry. Hamilton discussed how historical figures have negatively impacted nations through their passion and self-interest. He brought up the story of Pericles, as told by Plutarch in the Life of Pericles, to support his viewpoint that human nature plays a critical role in guiding nations. Hamilton pointed out that Pericles' own interests led to the destruction of Samos and sparked the Peloponnesian War. While Plutarch offers another viewpoint, suggesting that public mistrust towards Pericles was the real issue, Hamilton chose not to engage with this interpretation. Instead, he highlighted how using Pericles, known for his civic virtue, as an example, suggests a breakdown in the civic virtue's ability to uphold a republic. In his discussions about the nature of republics, Hamilton refers to the thoughts of philosophers like Montesquieu and Niccolò Machiavelli, who believed in the importance of combining democracy and aristocracy to keep republics from falling into war and conquest. He also connected these ideas to his own era, mentioning incidents like the Regulator Movement, the Pennsylvania Mutiny of 1883, and Shays' Rebellion to illustrate domestic unrest. Hamilton's argument in Federalist No. 6 reflects the empirical philosophy of David Hume, emphasizing that knowledge comes from experience rather than just logic. He didn't just theorize about human nature. He provided examples from history to show a pattern of individuals acting out of self-interest. Hamilton essentially argued that anyone observing human behavior and historical events would naturally conclude that human nature influences the course of history. Following Federalist No. 6, we dive into Federalist No. 7, where the discussion about the possibility of wars between states continues. Michael Zuckert, a political scientist, calls Federalist No. 6 a standout piece in the series of essays. James Madison takes another look at how human nature contributes to divisions in Federalist No. 10. Here, Madison mirrors Hamilton by supporting his argument with empirical evidence, but puts more weight on the inherent traits of human nature without leaning heavily on examples. Both Madison and Hamilton argue in their essays that figuring out what is best for a nation is not subjective, but can be objectively determined through logical reasoning. Hamilton challenges an idea in his essay that would evolve over time, the belief that republics focused on commerce would be less prone to warfare. This notion has developed into what we now know as democratic peace theory, as the world has become more connected through globalization. The way we view the concept of neighboring nations has expanded. Today, Hamilton's arguments about neighbors could very well apply to the global stage, suggesting a more universal application of his ideas. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more content.